I bought 300 iPhone 2Gs. Why? Because I'm fucking stupid. Have you ever wondered how much 300 iPhone 2Gs weigh? Well, I'll give you a hint. It's 80 pounds. I spent too much money on this, so we gotta open them. And you know what? Let's ease into it. We'll start with the smallest box. Oh God, I just saw in. And it hit me. Oh, there's so many and this is only the smallest box. Okay, I was told that one of these boxes had the bad ones. And I think this is the bad one box. Oh, they're just crammed in here. Oh, these look like they have seen some better days. Oh, geez, these are not looking too good, folks. And they're dirty. They're really dirty. This is definitely the bad ones box. If the entire lot of 300 are like this, I'm gonna be absolutely okay, some of these are not terrible. This one says best. Nice. Oh, jeez. Look at the damage. That didn't help. I just cannot believe my eyes. This one doesn't have iPhone engraved on it. After unloading the rest of the box, I came to a rather unfortunate realization. So far, we're at 2 that are like, okay. All right, let's get a tally here. How many are in this box? You're looking at 50 iPhones. This is only 1/6 of what I ordered. We clearly have a lot of iPhones to get to, so let's take a quick break to thank today's video sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Govee Life and their Smart Space Heater Lite. This compact, affordable smart heater combines an efficient and portable space heater with Govee's renowned smart home integration. It uses a PTC ceramic heating solution to allow for a heater core that is fast and quiet, heating up in just 2 seconds and measuring around 37 decibels. With simple buttons on top for activating timers, you can make sure that you don't overheat your space. And through the Govee app, you can start timers, create a schedule, and run your heater from anywhere. The Space Heater Lite also has impressive built-in safety features like overcurrent protection, 24-hour automatic shutoff, a flame retardant housing, and tip-over protection if your heater is knocked over. The Smart Space Heater Lite is a great addition to your smart home, and at only $49, it's affordable as well. So if you want to learn more, check out the link in the description below. And now let's get back to the video. Let's go to box number 2. Okay, here we go. Lots of tape on this one. I think this side feels the weakest, so we're gonna try to cut our way in here. Oh my. And straight off the bat, oh geez, this is, yeah, screen's not cracked, but that doesn't mean good condition here. Oh, these poor phones must have been through hell and back in shipping. I am also seeing quite a number of cracked screens. Cracked screen, cracked screen, cracked screen, cracked screen. This one's not terrible. The bottom is still loose, but maybe we can put that back on. Crack, 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 crack. Oh, intact. Yeah, it's my new favorite game show, Cracked or Intact. Haha. We're batting about 70-6. Oh, 7. Okay, we're making a little bit of progress here. Oof. Rough. Oof. Annihilated. 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 Annihilate. Yeah, that's cracked under the glass. And intact. But the back is also popping off. So far, none of these look like good. These are all pretty much destroyed, destroyed, destroyed. Still cracked, but not destroyed, also cracked. This box was not an improvement. Yeah, that's heavy. That feels like 170 iPhones, let me tell you. Oh, that's so many. All right, I'm going in at random, picking the first one out that I could see. Intact screen, awesome. And this one is a 16 gigabyte. We do have a pretty interesting mix of the 3 different sizes that were available for the iPhone 2G. So it looks like we're getting some actually intact screens here, although there are still some that have burned LCDs down there. That one's real bad. Bad. Ooh, what? Really bad and covered in poop. That's actually in not terrible condition. This one though, ugh. It's a 4 gig, but it is absolutely battered. Is this box a Filet-O-Fish? Because these things are battered. So I guess at this point we have to talk about another reality, which is that we don't actually know if any of these are going to work. Having an intact screen right now is the only measure of functionality that I'm using. I'm going, okay, that one doesn't have a crack and the back isn't actively falling off. That's a good phone. But I don't know if any of these, even the 20 or 30 good ones that we're gonna be left with, will be able to actually power on. These could have bad batteries. These could be water damaged for all I know. I mean, look at them. They definitely have not led easy lives. All right, here it is. The final handful of iPhone 2Gs. All right, so these need to be sorted and ranked. Welcome to my kingdom of decrepit iPhones. It's a little tragic, but what we have here are 103 cracked screens. So just over a third of them. Then these ones are intact, like they're not cracked, but the screens all have burn marks in them, so these LCDs are probably toasted. So that's 69 of those. Then we have this pile here that's 21 with what I'm gonna call minor burns. So it looks like it might not have damaged the LCD. We're definitely gonna wanna test those. Then we have this pile here that's 71 that are in pretty rough condition, but the screens look okay. And finally, we have 29 that are in okay condition that look like they'll clean up pretty well and the screens look fine. So this is basically the cream of the crop. So at this point, it's time to start the cleanup process. We gotta make sure that these phones aren't completely filthy and testing them as well. So I'm gonna move our pile of damaged phones off to the side. We're gonna focus on the ones that I think have the most potential, and let's jump into it. That took a while, but I cleaned up the stack with the nicest of the phones. And now comes the challenging part, which is we gotta test them. But sometimes iPhone 2Gs, especially if they're on older versions of iPhone OS, don't like to charge from wall power. They would rather be connected to a computer, and preferably one with FireWire. So I have a titanium power book with 3 lightning chargers attached to it, and we're gonna use this to do some of the testing. Plug them in and see what happens. Okay, immediately screen came on there. That's good. Booting. Oh man, the screen's messed up though. That sucks. And 3 for 3, but they're all kind of messed up. So that's not great. This is gonna be a long process. With this many phones, just plugging them in to see if they would turn on or not took several hours. This is chaos. It's day 2 now, and I've made it through testing the best phones. Turns out they're not that good. Yeah, I've got a huge pile over here. Those just, no sign, nothing at all. Screens look fine, but I have no idea if they actually are because they won't turn on. We've got another pile up in the front there, those are ones that are just boot looping. I think they have bad batteries or they just don't turn on, something's wrong with them. That tiny pile back there, see that? You need binoculars? Yeah, those are the ones that actually just turn on and seem to work normally. But even those, a lot of them have bad buttons and the home button doesn't work, the lock button doesn't work, you can't turn them off, they just have to run out of battery. We have a couple here that have good displays, but they don't actually turn on. And I can't actually test if the touch screens work because that's a common issue. Those all there, they seem to be working, but the screens are all a little bit, you know. And then everything else, I haven't even had a chance to test. We have an overwhelming number of phones. Okay, we need a strategy here, and this is it. The limiting factor for figuring out how many of these phones I can actually fix is gonna be how many good screens I have. Because clearly I know that I have like 170 bad ones, right? So I need to find out how many good screens there are, and then I can mix and match other parts. Anyway, back at it. So with this new strategy in mind, it's time to clean up and sort these phones into boxes. I put cracked and burned LCDs aside because we're only interested in testing for good screens now. And I also put the phones in not as good condition that I haven't gotten around to into this plastic bin here, and that's because iPhone 2Gs have their serial number engraved on the back housing, and I don't want to switch housings around because that's going to make the serial numbers not match. So these phones aren't a high priority for me to test. But once I had everything cleaned and sorted, I sat down with some of the good phones to try to restore them to a fresh version of iPhone OS. Well, my plan is not starting great. I have a collection here. These are some of the phones that I put in the working pile. All of these booted up and seem to work normally. And so what I'm trying to do is restore them. This one is stuck in a boot loop, and when you connect it to a Mac, it says the iPod software update server could not be contacted. Here's one that looks like it should be working fine, right? Just a blank page that says iPhone. This one was working 5 minutes ago, and now it's stuck in a boot loop. I don't even know what happened to these phones. I don't know how they ended up like this. So at this point, things seemed a little bit grim. Using iTunes version 8 on a Mac, I was basically getting nowhere. I was at 0 phones, completely restored and 100% working at this point. And then I made a breakthrough on, of all places, macOS Ventura. We're charging a bunch more phones, and one of them is showing up. I honestly don't know which one of these it is, but it's showing up. It's on iOS 3.1.3. Okay, we're gonna restore it to factory settings. How is this working? Sure enough, yeah, there's a 4 GB. That's a rare SKU, so that's good to see. Preparing iPhone for restore. Oh my God, it's got the loading bar. Okay, we're verifying iPhone software. I cannot believe that this process still works with the original iPhone. That's so funny. And it just popped up on the Mac once again. Activating. What? What? Did it activate? Set up as new device. How is this process working? Oh my gosh. Sync in progress. And now it's Luke Miani's iPhone. Slide to unlock. Oh my God, it worked. That's hilarious. This revelation honestly opened the floodgates a little bit, and I started restoring a couple of phones. Okay, so we're finally starting to make a little bit of progress. It's still hit or miss, but we do at least have 4 phones that I was able to plug in, charge, and restore to factory settings. Even on the working phones, there's still work to be done. This is all getting a bit overwhelming. So I'm gonna need to call in for some backup. This is Luke Miani. Get me DOS dude.
Hey, how's it going?
That's good, how are you?
Pretty good. You ready to work on some iPhones?
With the phones mostly sorted into categories now, our goal today was twofold. Number 1, to try to improve the condition of some of the phones deemed partially working, and number 2, to get phones restored onto older, clean versions of iOS.
So I brought a few things over to help us if necessary. Not sure how necessary it will be.
Probably quite.
Right here I've got a MacBook Air 1st gen with Windows 7 on it. And the reason I've got that is so I can run an old version of iTunes with some old jailbreaking tools as well that we might need to use.
This is my favorite phone, the Samurai phone. Oh yeah, that's so good. We decided to split into 2 teams. I would start testing more phones, and DOS Dude was going to work on restoring them. But very soon, we made another revelation. Plugging in over FireWire to an iPod charger brick is getting these phones to boot up more consistently than USB. And we're basically using this to like wake them up, because who knows how long these phones have been off in a drawer, in a box. A lot of them plugging into USB, it just doesn't do anything. But FireWire, this is good.
Oh, it's working. It's restoring.
Oh, that one we tried at your place on the BioPod.
I know, it didn't work.
I don't understand these phones. I don't understand this.
The MacBook Air is doing it, man.
Hell yeah! Our new method of using an older version of iTunes running on Windows was giving us a lot more success, including for phones like this that were completely locked up.
So we're just going to try to restore this one. And first thing we're going to do is put the phone in DFU mode. So now we'll just restore and hopefully it'll just go to 1.0.
Hey, not bad.
So far so good. And this whole process works a lot better under Windows XP. So we actually are installing on another machine right now. Yep, restoring iPhone software now.
Yes.
All right, so this is normal when you're downgrading to iOS 1.0. If you see the phone, it has the old recovery mode screen, which is good. That means it was successful, but this error is normal. So go ahead and select that and then just exit out of iTunes and then open the iLiberty Plus jailbreaking utility and then go to other tools and select jump out of recovery mode. Okay.
Oh, look at that, activate iPhone.
So now you want to wait for iTunes to process it and it's going to error. It's not going to be able to activate it. Okay. It says there's no SIM card, but even if there was, we wouldn't be able to activate it on iOS 1.0. So go ahead and select OK on that, close it, open up iLiberty a second time, and then you're going to want to go to Advanced, Local, select Activate 1.0 to 1.1.4, and I always select Unlock as well, so that way it's carrier unlocked. And just hit the button, and now the jailbreak process is proceeding.
Oh, it's on. Slide to unlock. Look at that. There it is. iPhone OS 1.0.2. But hey, this was a phone that I had put in the junk pile, and now it is fully working, well, almost fully working on iPhone OS 1.0. Nice. I'm making my way through a pile of phones that were initially classified as not working, but because of our FireWire method, I'm getting more of them to turn on. Those are going into the bad battery pile if they have a bad battery. They're going into the junk pile if they're still not turning on or booting. And then in this one, well, these are phones that are actually booting up, but they have other issues. They have bad displays, bad batteries, something like that. Definitely could be repaired, but I just don't have the time, space, or energy to do that. Over here, these honestly need to be retested because that's from my day one of testing. This guy is going to need new buttons. These are phones that are booting, restored, and have good batteries, but they need new displays. And our smiley face pile here at the end, these are good, restored, and fully operational with the exception of like a speaker or a button or something a little bit more minor. Oh yeah, and all of these have not even been tested yet. And I haven't tested any of the ones with cracks or the ones with dead screens. So all of this testing that we're doing, I think is on about a third of the lot. So a lot more work to be done, but I want to try my hand at a screen replacement. I've only done it once before on the iPhone 2G. Now, the reason that I think this one is worth repairing is because it's not in bad condition and it's a 4 GB model. These are a lot more rare and valuable. Now we do have a good battery, and I was able to restore this to iPhone OS 1.0.2. So apart from the display, this is a really good candidate. So the first thing we're gonna do is pop out the SIM card tray. What I like to do is start with this thin metal pick, and we're gonna wedge it in between the housing of the dock connector and the bottom plastic here. So you don't wanna go in the dock connector, you wanna go just above it. And there we go. We can get this tool in place here, and this one we're gonna insert in the same way. We can pull that out. And this one is actually gonna go pretty deep. So by sliding this in here, we've now disengaged some clips that are above the dock connector, and we've made a slight gap between the plastic and the display. Now we're gonna go ahead and grab one of these guitar picks and try to insert it in that bottom hole right there. Okay, now once we get this in, we're gonna move around the side of the phone here, and this should, oh, come on. I think it actually did it there, yeah. It's gonna disconnect that clip. We'll do the same on the other side. So now we'll lift up and pull this away from the phone. Next, we'll grab a 000 Phillips head screwdriver, and we're gonna remove 3 screws that secure the back case. Okay, so now comes the really fun part, and for this, I've ordered this special dental pick here. You can see it's actually gotten pretty significantly bent just from the amount of force that it sometimes requires to get these backs off. But basically what we're gonna do here is find a small gap between this metal rail on the inside of the phone and the aluminum back housing. So the hole we're looking for is right in here. We're gonna insert the dental pick, and we're going to lift up, and that's going to disengage the clips on the side of the case. This one actually came off super duper easily. If you need a little bit of help here, we'll grab this prying tool, and we'll go around and get those clips to disengage. And there we go, we get the case off. We're gonna go ahead and disconnect the back housing. So now that we're inside the phone, we do have a couple of obstacles. The first one is the camera, which can be removed extremely easily. So we can set that off to the side as well. Now we wanna remove the battery, because in the 2G, the battery is soldered to the logic board. You can see the solder joints right there. So we're gonna grab a guitar pick, the same kind that we used to get the bottom off, and we're gonna slide that in the side here and start cutting through on the underside of the adhesive here. So next we're gonna grab a spudger here and disconnect these 2 antenna connections. Now the actual logic board itself only is held in with 3 Phillips head screws. So this process is pretty easy now. And now we'll grab onto the logic board up here by the SIM connection, pull straight up, you'll feel it release. It's gonna disconnect from the connectors that are easy to remove but not easy to install. And we'll go ahead and pull the battery out of the way. The final thing that we wanna do is grab this little ZIF connector. This is actually for the dock on the bottom. So we're gonna go ahead and pull that out, and there you have it. So before we grab our new display, I do want to bring the metal bezel over because this one is in better condition than the one on my donor display. So we're just going to remove 10 tiny little Phillips head screws from around the edge. All right, so with our bezel switched over onto the new display, we are now entering the trickiest part of this process, and that is putting the logic board back in. Now I'm gonna separate these cables here because these 3, you have to connect them from beneath while you put the board in, and it's not fun. So my recommendation would be to pull up just a little bit here on the dock connector, and then we can insert that first, and we're gonna get our dental pick. And I'm gonna hold the phone up and try to maneuver into position. We'll slide the battery into its compartment. Okay, that took about 25 minutes, but we got everything connected, I think. But before we put anything back together, we should definitely run a quick test here. Looks like the home button works. All right, we are good to go. Let's start putting this back together. So that definitely took a long time, but I think it was worth it. This is now probably the nicest, or at least the most valuable phone out of this pile. So I'm really happy to be able to get this one restored. That's a job well done, but it was only 1 out of 300, so a lot more work to do. Over the next 2 weeks, I replaced literally dozens of screens and continued to test, sort, and diagnose dozens more phones. This whole lot came from China, and it was really cool to see loads of old apps and tourism photos. I'm testing some more phones today, and this actually blew my mind. All of these phones came from China in bulk, and yet this particular one has an app with DC Metro maps on it. I live in Washington, D.C., and the person that owned that phone 16 years ago must have lived here too. I don't know why that's so crazy, but it is. And after doing so many repairs on these things, I started to get really good. Like, can you even tell this phone was taken apart? Not to brag, but I'm like the master of putting these things back together now. I even came up with some tricks like putting a bit of paper or plastic in the lock button mechanism if they were worn down. This is some next level stuff here. So here's another little trick that I learned from DOS Dude. This iPhone 2G board has a really swollen battery, and as we've talked about, they're soldered to the board, so it makes replacing them a real pain. Except that it doesn't have to, because if you're like me and you have a couple iPhone boards laying around, you can actually separate the battery and antenna board from the main logic board. Boom, there you go. It just splits right open. Now we lost this little metal cover, but that's fine. So then you just do the same thing to another board with a good battery and snap them back together. And that's probably the easiest way to replace an iPhone 2G battery. Let's go ahead and reassemble it to see if it worked. So there you have it, the phone is all reassembled. As you can see, battery works perfectly, and even though we replaced the wireless antennas, it is still able to detect all the Wi-Fi networks in my area, which means that this thing works completely normal, and that is a nice little hack on how to replace your iPhone 2G battery without a soldering iron. And this is now a pretty nice little phone. It's a 4 gig on iPhone OS 1.0. We can go ahead and add that to the pile. Wow, look at that. Guys, this video has taken its toll on me. I started this project in April 2023, and it is current date when I'm uploading this. I've got cuts on my fingers from the dental pick that I used to get into these things, cutting it open. But all this time, pain, and labor was in service of these phones. 37 iPhone 2Gs. That's how many I was able to repair. That's a small number. So how did we go from 300 phones down to just 37 good ones? Well, remember, the limiting factor was displays, and we had nearly 100 cracked phones, so those are immediately written off. And the sad truth is the iPhone 2G has a very unreliable display. They are very prone to dead pixels or any number of issues, so we had a lot of phones that just had those failures. Now I've organized all of these with the least valuable over here and the most valuable over here. So this pile, these phones have some issues like the screen works but is kind of messed up, or they're in really bad condition. So we got a couple of those. Then there's some wild cards here, like we have some jailbroken ones with a ton of apps and tweaks, so I kind of just separated those out. Then we have this pile. These are phones that work and are in pretty decent shape. I mean, look, that's not too bad, but they'll have some small issue, like this one has no ringer switch, and the case serial number doesn't match the phone serial number. And that brings us on to this stack. These are all completely functional. Every single feature on them works, and all of these phones are running iPhone OS 1.1.4. Some of these are actually really, really nice, like this one right on top. This is a nice phone. This thing looks awesome. Now, this next stack here, these are also 8GB phones, but these are all on iPhone OS 1.0.2. Now, the earlier the OS, the more valuable the phone. That's basically how it goes. So these are worth more. And again, some of these are in pretty decent condition. And then our final pile here, which is actually a pretty big stack, all of these are 4GB iPhone 2Gs, and they're all on 1.0.2. Now, the conditions range. You know, some of them aren't very nice, but some of them are actually pretty decent. But the big thing is that these are 4 gigs. The original 4GB phones are worth a ton of money because they're very rare. Out of the lot of 300, there were only these 8 and 5 additional ones that I wasn't able to get working. So 13 out of 300 were 4 gigs, and that's a pretty representative sample of how uncommon they are. And they're rare because people didn't really want them. They only had 3.5 gigabytes of usable space after you account for iOS. So they weren't really being bought, and Apple discontinued the 4GB model just 3 months after launch. So I'm actually very happy with how this project came out. As painful, literally and emotionally, as it was to get these 37 phones working, I am actually pretty happy with that yield. I bought these phones basically as junk, so the fact that any of them are good is a win in my book. And I do think it's worth mentioning that the vast majority of these phones do actually boot up. The logic board in these original phones is actually very reliable. And so batteries, speakers, and screens are the failures that I'm encountering, not that the phone just doesn't turn on at all. So while the nearly 40 phones that I was able to fix doesn't sound like a lot, I consider it a huge success. This was a massive lot of untested junk phones, and out of the box, only a couple of them worked. No, I mean literally 2 phones out of the whole lot of 300 just worked without me having to do anything. So that means I had to open up the backs, replace screens, batteries, logic boards 35 times. So yeah, this video has been one of the biggest projects I've ever worked on, and I'm really, really happy with how it turned out. But it's also a little bit bittersweet because as it happens, this right now that I'm filming at this very second is the last video on this channel that you will see filmed at this location where I've been for more than 2 years. I'm actually moving from Washington, D.C. all the way to Los Angeles. And as of the recording right now, my moving truck comes in less than 24 hours. So it's still a little bit of packing to do, but I just wanted to come to you guys at the end of this video as basically an unintentional peek of what I've been able to do in this space. Now, I don't know if you will have seen any new content from my new location, but this is it. This is the last thing that I am filming here, and it's kind of fitting that it's in this video, this absolutely incredible, wild video that took me months to work on. I think I tallied it up, okay? And I spent over 200 hours on this video, not just making the content, but editing it, fixing up all those phones. It almost blows my mind. But really, it's all thanks to you guys. I mean, it's because of you that I can spend 200 hours working on 300 iPhones and then move cross country to keep doing even more in Los Angeles. So a huge thanks to you guys. I appreciate you every single day. And I really hope you enjoyed this video and all of these videos at this apartment for the past 2 years. I'm excited for what's to come. Very nervous about such a long move, but you're not going to see the end of me yet. Take care.